Yeah.
That's okay. Right here. Welcome to everybody who is joining us on YouTube. We are having our first study session for the Wednesday class we still have not named in person in a while. Hopefully we'll keep doing it this way. I'm going to move up a little bit. So what we're going to do today, and I'm sorry this view is a little strange, but then again, so am I. So what we're doing today is first saying thank you to Paul and Eva over here who have not only a beautiful home, but the spread they put out is second to none. So since Passover is coming up, I'm going to be eating a lot of it over the next 2.5 days because, and so
have to stay
we may say we may have be sleeping here.
Sleep over.
That's right, sleep over.
Actually, I have containers, so you can.
Oh my God.
All right, I am not shy about taking containers, just to let you know. Before I got married, when I was single, it was like automatic. Like you just did it on your own. I also want to welcome Anita. I think she's coming to her first one, so welcome. And Paul and Eva and Anita all moved here during COVID, so it's nice that we're able to get to see them in person. So welcome to Lee and Genevieve who are online. Welcome on Zoom, and welcome to everyone who is on YouTube. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Passover, just to spend a little time talking about Passover. International Passover traditions, and then we're going to invite people to share their own Passover traditions because I think those are in many ways even more important and more vibrant. So I'm just going to start by saying again that Passover is my favorite holiday, although by day 6 or 7 it's not my favorite holiday anymore. But it's my favorite holiday because it's the combination of the Jewish tradition and the family tradition. You can do it in the social hall of your synagogue or at somebody's home. It's a way of participating in which everybody gets to participate. It's not just prayers, it's stories and games. And it really has become the most popular of all Jewish traditions today. So more people will go to a Seder than will go to Yom Kippur services or Rosh Hashanah services or celebrate Hanukkah or do anything else. So again, welcome to Lee and welcome to Genevieve. So we're going to talk a little bit about some traditions around the world. Some of them are still in effect. A lot of the places we're going to talk about, the Jews are no longer there anymore, but they keep the traditions. A lot of them have moved to Israel and America, as most obviously have. So, and then we're going to talk about any traditions you have in your home. But if you know of some international traditions or traditions anywhere, and I know Larry's brought some Haggadot to share with us, then please. So we'll start off with Afghanistan. And Afghanistan is maybe the most famous of the traditions outside of the normal ones we use. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Afghani traditions. I don't know if there are any. I don't think there are any Jews at all in Afghanistan. There's still a couple in Iran, but that's almost. I think the last ones may have left actually. I think they got on a boat or they left like the last 6 months or a year. There was like one left. And he left. He moved to Israel finally. He was the keeper of the synagogue. So I don't know what's going to happen there. But what is the tradition with Afghani Jews? And it's interesting we're using Afghanistan because obviously a lot of Afghanistani people are moving to Savannah, and we are working with the refugee organization in Savannah. We are sponsoring a family, but we also help out with a lot of others. I know my wife is giving them rides all the time helping. There is an organization we've worked with. It's now called Inspiritus. We worked with them years ago, but then there were no refugees coming in. So they went defunct. Used to be Lutheran Services, and now with what happened in Afghanistan, America was bringing more in, and so they send them here and they ask for what assistance, and we give what we can. So in Afghanistan, they take, of course, the long scallions, and then they whip themselves and whip the people next to them as if you're being whipped by the slaves. Wow. So hopefully scallions, I don't know the exact scallions they use. I know the ones we have here are really tiny, and it would be like whipping a Barbie doll because they're so tiny, but the ones they use there are long scallions. So I don't know if they hurt. Has anybody ever been whipped by a scallion before? All right. Nobody here has. That is shocking. So that is that's probably the most famous one. They're not the only place that does it, but I think they were most famous for doing it.
And the purpose of it is what?
To remember being whipped by the slaves.
slaves.
Yeah, it's kind of reenacting the whipping itself.
Wow.
And again,
Maybe thinking of Catholicism, how they
Yeah.
think, how they,
Yes.
what's
Yeah.
that called when they?
it's self-flagellation.
Flagellation, yeah.
Yeah, this is
Well,
not.
this is flagellation with a scallion.
Yes, but it's not meant to be. There's not meant to be marks there, by the way. I think this is more ceremonial.
Yeah.
I don't think they're really trying to hurt each other, thank goodness.
Unless they're
So,
your sibling.
right, if it is your sibling, that is a good point.
Yeah.
Then maybe, yeah, my parents would not have allowed my brother and I to have scallions during our Seder's growing up. All right, some of the,
Were you able to admit the fellow from Las Vegas?
yeah, Les is there.
Les is there, great, thank you.
Larry says hi, by the way, Les. And Les is waving hi. So these, I just looked up and I found some of the ones I thought were more interesting. Some of the Hasidim from an area called, and you may guys have heard of this area, I had not, Gora Kalwaria, which is an area of Poland where there was a very prominent Hasidic. On the seventh day, they pour water on the floor of their home and they lift up their coats, say the name of the towns where they are from or their family's from in that area, and then they walk through the water, kind of like
Wow.
the spread in the Dead Sea. So they actually pour water on the floor and then they walk through as they say out the names. It's very similar to my house because my son has a big diaper rash right now. So there is pee all over the floor because but that probably is not good for Passover.
This is on the seventh day.
It's on the seventh day. So for some, that would have been the last day. For some, it would be the next to last day, depending on your culture. So that was a really strange, you basically shout out the name of your town, which probably no longer exists, or certainly the Jewish community doesn't. And in many cases, the towns themselves have ceased to exist since the Jews have ceased to
Is
exist
that
there.
Hasidic, you said?
That's a
So
Hasidic.
did the Hasidim today still do that, do you know?
I think they still do, but it's this particular sect, just this one group from this one area. So I believe they still do it. It's called Gora, Gora, Kalwaria. And again, there's tons of traditions. I picked out 10 I thought was really
How do you
interesting.
spell that last word?
Kalwaria.
Okay.
Kalwaria.
It's also a good way to clean the floor after a whole week of
Right,
baking.
that's right. Cleaning the floor from all the harosets being dropped by the children and eaten by the pets. That's right. Good idea. So, and if you don't do it on one of the holidays, you can use one of the scrubby washes too that are electric.
And that's in Poland?
That was from Poland. I don't think that community exists in Poland anymore, although they're interesting enough, there are a few more Jews now in Poland than there were a few years ago, so the number has increased. In India, obviously, probably the most famous Jewish community out east of the Middle East would be the Indian one or the Chinese one. And anybody here been to Cochin in India? If you go to Cochin, it's in the south, so most people don't go visit. When you go to India, you go see, Bombay or Delhi, or go see the mountains, go see the Taj Mahal. But if you go south, which is a beautiful area, I've seen a lot of documentaries on it. I met some people from there. There is a very ancient Jewish community. There are, I believe, no more Jews living there from that community. There are people who are there who run the tourism to take people, the Jews, around the synagogues, which are still there. No anti-Semitism. I think in the history of in the community, I think the last Jew again just left. There may be one left, just left a few years ago or just died. So in the history of that community, there had never been an instance of anti-Semitism and it didn't end because of anti-Semitism. It ended because people moved away for jobs and then people died, obviously. So the family, the community was there for 2,000 years. And this is really interesting because they do a lot. They begin preparing for Passover the day after Hanukkah.
Oh my God.
So they take it very seriously.
Yeah.
They don't mess. It's kind of like Paul and Eva preparing for this. you guys can't see the spread they have laid out, it's like 50 different types of things. And Eva made sure to say, well, that's the one thing I didn't make. Everything else was handmade. So after Hanukkah, they had such a belief in Passover, but they felt like you cannot make any mistake at all in the preparation or in the holiday itself. So for the 100 days before, 100 days,
They don't eat bread.
no, they look for it to make sure to find. So they
okay.
spend
It's
100
not
days
posted for Passover.
looking for the chametz every
Wow.
day to
Wow.
ensure that then they spend 100 days cleaning all the utensils to make sure every utensil is
But if they get it ready
scrubbed.
so early, it's too early for Passover.
And I imagine they clean it and they have to re-clean it. They have to re-clean it again. Yeah.
Oh,
They kept special rooms in which all the Passover utensils were kept,
wow.
thoroughly
I used to
scrubbed.
do that.
Houses would be scraped and repainted
Oh, God.
after Purim. So after Purim, you start scraping and repainting your house. They would drain the wells. That's, I thought, was just shocking. Drain the well so they wouldn't be polluted with any chance of chametz got into the well.
Wow.
Each grain of rice would be examined to ensure it was free from cracks in which chametz might find its way into. So they would take every single grain of rice, and they would, obviously they ate rice. I'm like, that's an Ashkenazic tradition not to eat rice, so not out there. So they examine every single grain of rice. That is dedication. And that's what we're going to be doing in Mikveh Israel next year, just for you guys.
I was thinking by the time they get to Passover, they're exhausted.
I know they must be exhausted and their eyes must be.
Nothing else to do.
It doesn't have anything. I assume 2,000 years ago they had some sort of magnifying glasses, but who knows?
What would make the rice perfect then?
If- If there is a crack in the rice and there's a chance that chametz, because remember rice sometimes the bags are next to the wheat. If there's a chance that chametz got into the crack, which you would not be able to see, by the way, so that rice would be invalidated, basically. So
So they ate the regular rice and then they bought new rice.
yes, exactly.
Right, so
I doubt they threw it away. They just made it chametz so they could eat it for a regular meal.
Right.
Yeah, they're not wasting food.
Rabbi, I missed in the beginning, which Indian community?
It's called Cochin, Cochin.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
This is really the ancient community. They were invited there 2,000 years ago. They stayed. Even today, it's supposed to be an amazing tour. I was in India. I've only been there once and I debated, but India is a pretty large country. So to go all the way down and go to the mountains was going to be a lot. So I decided that would be the next trip. So if I go again, I'll go there. So that I thought was that's like really dedication beyond belief. In Gibraltar, which is not a famous Jewish community, but there was one there. It's of course a little island off the island. I don't know if anybody's been to Gibraltar. I have not, but you're there. Okay, so I have not. I hear it's very nice. This is where it gets a little scary for me because they would take the dust of bricks and put it in their charoset, and that's what they would eat
Oh, my.
to remind us of the bricks, obviously that they made. So
it's really
so they're actually eating brick
Eating
dust.
bricks.
Yes. Now in the Civil War, this was in Gibraltar. In the Civil War, we remember there was a very famous Seder where they couldn't find Jewish boys, I believe in the north, couldn't find the ingredients for haroset, so they just put a brick on the Seder plate. They didn't eat it though. They were not as dedicated as the Gibraltarian Jews who ate. That's probably why all Gibraltarian Jews today have bad tummies. Yeah. So that's why there are so many Gibraltarian Jewish tummy doctors also. Ethiopia, which is obviously now a very famous Jewish community. It was not until a few years ago, because most Jews did not even know there was a Jewish community there until the last 60, 70 years. And obviously they became very famous because of Operation Solomon and Moses. I think those were the two that brought the Jews to there are still Jews in Ethiopia, by the way. Some of them may not have been able to convince Israel that they were actually Jewish, others stayed. Israel's still bringing in some from time to time. They are so dedicated there that they break all of their dishes.
What?
Yeah, and symbolize a break from the past to the present, and then they get new dishes every year. So obviously these are not,
Good, not China.
good China.
Not made in China.
Yeah. But they just break. It's kind of like the ceremony of
Wow.
breaking the dish when you
Yeah.
get married. That is so
Yeah.
famous in the Greek culture, but there are Jewish groups that break dishes for marriage as well. I've been to one. I've done one wedding where I forgot
What
where
country?
it may be Greece. It may be, I forgot the country they were from, but they broke the dish because that was a family tradition.
Well, in Hungary, when they get engaged, but you have to find like a really pretty,
Really?
dish, and they break. And
So maybe they're
everybody gets
Hungarian.
a piece of this dish, and I don't even know where is my daughter's.
And what do you do with it when you get the piece? You
It's
just keep it. You just keep it.
Keep it as a.
I never heard that part. So this could have been Hungarian, but this was actually actual wedding, like not the actual wedding, but right before. Like
Okay, no,
the
this
night
is
at-
engagement.
This was, I know,
Tish.
I think it was during the Tish or the night before.
At the Tish, that they
The
break
Tish,
the
yeah.
plate. Yeah. But
Yeah.
if I can jump in on the Gibraltar with the brick, I've read that it's the same brick that they used for generations. It's not that they disintegrate an
Really?
entire brick. They pass it down through the years and just take a little bit.
Yeah, that does make it worse, actually, sanitation wise. I think that's probably not, yeah. Wow, that is dedicated. I am not that dedicated. I'm not eating brick dust, not intentionally. In Syria, where there are still a few Jews, although there may not be now since the Civil War, but there were Jews there before the Civil War, a very small community. They take the matzah and they put it in a knapsack. They put it over their shoulder. They recite verses about leaving in haste. And then people there will ask them, why are you carrying matzah? Where are you coming from? And where are you going? And they answer it. So they actually have the knapsack as if they're leaving Egypt. And they ask, what are you coming from? We're coming from Egypt. What are you carrying? We're carrying matzah. Where are you going? We're going to Jerusalem, which is obviously anachronistic because there was no Jerusalem at the time of the Exodus. But
That's funny because we did something like this.
oh, really? Where?
At our Seder, because I taught a Sunday school, and for the kids, something that it was take a napkin and you can put matzah or anything in, do it like you said as a knapsack. And I'm leaving Egypt, and we tried explaining,
That's
the
great.
teacher, that they're in a hurry. What are you going to take? I'm going to take a pot. I'm just going. So the person next to them said, I'm leaving Egypt, and again, the same knapsack. I'm going to take a pot, and I'm going to take the rabbi's picture.
Okay.
And
So you just keep adding, so you have to remember
but
again?
that's so funny.
That's
that
great.
I never knew this was done anywhere. I came up with the idea.
Flossie was just saying for class for Sunday school, they used to do something very similar and have the kids have a pretend knapsack or a napkin, and then they would say what they're bringing, and then the next person would say what the person before, so that everybody can remember. All right, so now for Hungary, I did find a tradition, so this may be, you mean true or not, but it's, they decorate the Seder table with gold and silver jewelry.
Where is this?
This was in Hungary
Hungary.
Not in our
in
ours.
town.
And it is because when this is in the wealthier parts of Hungary, because when the Israelites left Egypt, the Egyptians gave them jewelry to send them on their way, kind of
They
as,
did?
yes, they did. That's how they used to build the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant.
Wow.
So they were giving
I
jewelry.
knew that.
There's two ways to look at it. One, they were being nice. It's kind of like a severance package. Number two, they were just in the middle of these plagues and they didn't want any more of them. So take some
Right.
gold
Take
and
the
say,
gold.
yes, yeah.
Get out of Dodge.
So it may not be so that, Eva, which area are you from, by the way?
It's a little town. You would never.
Okay, so she says that this tradition is not from her area.
Not in the.
I wonder if it was from mine,
town.
because my family comes from Hungary, but we don't know where exactly,
really?
so.
Yeah.
So, but we never did
Yeah,
that.
I went to school. I went to a Jewish high school in Budapest, but there was no.
There's not, but-
anything like that.
Okay.
So I don't know.
All right,
Someplace.
someplace. So somebody either lied to me,
I don't think so.
because I trust her point of view more than mine, quite frankly. The Jews of Yemen, which if you remember, were kind of like the Ethiopian Jews, but 30 years early, where they were all airlifted from Yemen to Israel in 1950s when they were being kicked out. They were forced to leave everything behind. They were also forced to keep people behind for a while to train the Yemenite people there how to stitch rugs and do all these artistic things they knew how to do. That was the agreement Israel made with Yemen, that people had to leave all their stuff and they had to leave behind people to train how to do all of these things. And what they did, they ate eggs as the main course during the Seder night, which of course is not unlike us, except for they had a wide range of eggs. It wasn't just a hard boiled one. They had egg cakes, chopped eggs with potatoes, fried eggs, omelets, and hard boiled eggs. So this stuff is not, funny enough, this is all very familiar to us because these are dishes we still eat, not necessarily for Passover, but for Passover, but also during the rest of the year. So it's not anything unusual. Now, obviously, if they're using chopped potatoes, we know the tradition is not that old because potatoes came from the New World. So potatoes didn't get to Europe until after Columbus actually brought it. I don't know when it finally got to the Middle East. And so, so now what they say today they do, at least in the London Yemenite community, is they still do eat some of the eggs, but they also have a more substantial meal. So in other words, the egg was the meal. So they didn't have, I mean, I'm sure they ate all the stuff on the Seder plate, but they didn't have like all the other stuff we have with 3 or 4 courses. So it was, everything had to be part eggs for the meal. But a gentleman who I was reading about said they don't do that anymore. They actually have a full meal, but they still eat the eggs.
In all the communities, Rabbi, is matzah kind of though the one key ingredient that is common and
Yes,
and there are
matzah.
various different types of it?
There are different types of matzah, but matzah is the one thing that is in every place, and that is obviously because it's actually in the Torah. So there are no Jewish communities that predate the Torah that we know of that keep traditions. The Ethiopians obviously were pre-Talmud and pre-Hanukkah, but Cochin was very old as well, but nothing predates the Torah in terms of Jewish tradition. So matzah is specific. There are very few things in the Torah in terms of specific things like this for holidays. Each holiday basically gets one thing. You know, Rosh Hashanah, you blow the horn. Yom Kippur, you have to abstain from sort of self-denial, which is not always fasting, but in most places it's become fasting. Passover is the matzah. Sukkot is putting up the sukkah, and Shavuos is the 10 Commandments. So there's one little thing that's connected to each thing.
Is Hanukkah?
Actually, Shavuot is not the 10 Commandments. No, the 10 Commandments are connected with Shavuos later. So
Hanukkah, the dreidel or latke, something with oil?
for Hanukkah is such a later one.
Okay.
Not everybody celebrates Hanukkah because if your community was separated before Hanukkah, you don't. But if you do celebrate Hanukkah, the oil in the menorah is the binding thing. But that again is not a that is not a major holiday because it's not in the Torah, but it's still a celebrated holiday. And again, it wasn't that celebrated throughout history. I mean, it's been like a minor celebration until recently.
Feel Jews gave it more prominence because of it coming around Christmas?
Oh, yeah. There are two reasons Hanukkah has become more prominent. Number one, by far, is Christmas. Christmas was not the big holiday it is today either. It's one of the two major holidays, but it's the second most important. Easter is traditionally the more important holiday. But what really, I think it was Coca-Cola came up with the Santa Claus in the 19th century. I mean, Santa Claus existed, but they created the red cheeks and the fun Santa. I think Santa beforehand was kind of like a rough Russian guy, basically. And he became the more happy one. Then he came up with the songs and then the cards, and this is evolving over 150 years, and then the parties, and so Hanukkah tagged along. But in Israel, Hanukkah didn't become super popular, but it was celebrated because obviously the Maccabees kicked the Assyrian Greeks out. So the Israelis were about, being tough. So Hanukkah had a resurgence in Israel as well. And funny enough, what's happened in America is now happening in Israel because they do give presents to kids for Hanukkah now in Israel in a lot of groups. Yeah, but that starts here. Okay, wait, we'll do a couple more and then we'll hear a couple of family. Well, I think we can stop there because I want to hear anybody have any interesting family traditions?
Fascinating.
Okay, sure.
We actually,
And I'm going to repeat what she says, everybody, in case so you can hear it.
so on our Seder plate, we usually put an orange on it. Right?
Okay, so you do the orange.
Yeah, so you know what the
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, but that's recent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but not that. I mean, it's probably 1980s. Yeah,
Right.
so
right.
Go back that far?
yeah, I think so. I think that's when it originated.
They said that.
Yeah.
I think that's one world.
And maybe later. I thought it was in 1980s.
A rabbi was saying, a woman in the bima, there'll be a woman in the beamer, there'll be an orange on the Seder.
Right.
Right.
And that is a wonderful story. It is also not true.
true.
Yeah.
Not true, Brenda.
I only found this out a few years
Me
ago.
too.
About
Not
5.
true.
It is not. No, that it's some say a woman on the bima or a woman rabbi. Well,
Yeah.
the day that happens, there will be an orange on the Seder plate. The real story is Susannah Heschel. And I believe this. I thought the same thing. I said the same thing, and somebody said that's not true. I said, sure it is. And then I found out Susannah Heschel, who is the the daughter of Abraham Joshua Heschel, one of the most famous Jews of the 20th century, obviously, was talking to a gay community. And they came to her and they said, listen, there's Miriam's cup. We want to do something to represent us. We want to put bread on the Seder plate.
Whoa.
And she said, it's a great idea to do something that represents you, but I think you should pick something that does not break the rules of Passover. And they came up with the orange. I think they were in Florida. I don't know if that's true. I'm just saying. But you can look up the real story. But that was when I thought the exact same thing. So it's so funny. So the orange is very popular. We will be having an orange on the Seder plate Friday night and Saturday at the synagogue. We were going to have an orange at every table, but they were like, no, because there's going to be so much stuff, it's going to get smushed. But yeah, that's a wonderful,
I won't tell my daughter.
yeah.
There are urban legends.
Yeah.
so-
And for all I know, the one I learned is an urban legend over urban legend. So it could be not so. Any other ones that traditions? And so Flossie's that one. So now we talked about the orange now.
Again, going back to with my teaching,
Knapsack.
and then I incorporated it with my own children to show crossing the Red Sea. I got a plastic, I guess you'd say, that we washed did the babies in tub. I
Okay.
couldn't think of the word. Okay. Put some water, and to go to the Seder, it was like in the way between the two rooms, you had to cross over that.
Oh,
to get
so you have
into
to
the
step up.
Seder.
That's nice. So
That's cute.
she takes a child's
Work with the
bathtub and they
kids.
they step over the bathtub water. That's pretty cool.
Jeff was the lifeguard.
And Jeff was the lifeguard. Jeff was the lifeguard for that. Yes, I trust him in that instance. Larry,
Yeah, bringing back some memories. We all lived in Brooklyn at the time, my grandparents, and they were kind of the nucleus so that everybody would congregate at their house. And I remember my grandmother used to make raisin wine for the kids.
Oh,
Which
really?
was a very sweet wine.
That would be
and the
delicious.
children, I don't know if it had much alcohol in it, but it was delicious.
Raisin
But
wine.
raisin wine, but the thing that I really remember about it was that she used to buy jelly, and the jelly would come in these jars that had decorations of like comic strip characters on it. And after the jelly jars were, used up, she would use these, and that's what she would serve the raisin wine.
Oh,
in.
so
And I just remember those glasses.
That is awesome. Do you have any by any chance still?
No, I wish I did.
Yeah.
I wish I did.
He was telling us that his grandmother used to make raisin wine, and which was really delicious apparently. And she would take bottles they'd got jam out of, and there were cartoons on the jam bottles. Once they used the jam, she'd clean it out and serve the raisin wine in those jam bottles. So that's really clever. That's really cute.
And we used
Can I add one?
Oh, sure. Les, give me 1 second. We're finishing with Larry and then we'll come to you.
The Amazing Race, we incorporated that into our Seder.
The TV show?
Because we had grandchildren of different ages, and that the older would guide the younger ones who couldn't even read. And I would create this kind of a scavenger hunt.
Nice.
Of clues, take 12 steps here. Go
That's a
right,
great
look at a
idea.
Picture, is it on the side, the right? The kids would help the younger kids out for the scavenger hunt. But traditions have changed, and we really miss those. But we're lucky to be here where we can still celebrate it.
He was just talking about how also they did a scavenger hunt for all the kids, which is a great idea. I may do that Friday night if I have time. Larry, you wanted to share?
We had a large extended family on Long Island, in Brooklyn, Queens, and Long Island. We would have second night seders of 100 to 125 people.
Wow.
We would
Just a
take out,
family?
we would do it in a restaurant or one of the country clubs that would work with us for the menu. But the tradition was the 4 oldest children who had not yet become bar bat mitzvah would say the 4 questions. So we would cycle our way up doing 4, 3, 2, 1 over the years. And our afikomen gift, we would get a silver dollar for saying the question.
That's awesome.
And everybody's moved, not everybody, people have moved away across the country, as I can attest to, but they're getting back together again on Long Island. This Saturday, they're going to have almost 70 people together.
Wow, that is
And
awesome.
it's family and extended family. It's wonderful.
That is it's still today. That's awesome. And if you don't know, Long Island is in New York. Just to let you know. Yeah.
It's long.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is that why it's called Long Island? I don't know. I've never been there. I've been to Manhattan like twice. Yeah. Michael.
Well, I think I might have mentioned this a couple of years ago. This is a recent tradition, maybe 20 years ago. Our friends, we lived in Northern Virginia, and the first night people would come to our house. And then the second night, some would go to somebody else's house who'd been at our house the night before. Well, we had one year we were able to get this rather nice shank bone for the Seder plate. And the following night, we'd bring it to our friend's house and they would use it. And we did this for a whole bunch of years. And as we were moving here, I think right after the last Passover that we were in Northern Virginia, the shank bone split. So we have half and they have half, and both families still use it today. So when they talk about it, I think that's kind of.
Michael was telling us that they and another family shared a shank bone on one night of Passover. One would have it on the second night, the other one would. And when they moved here, they realized it had split. So now both families have half of the shank bone. That is awesome. Larry and then Flossie.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, this is the contemporary, I brought a couple of.
It's a great night to remember. It's a great one.
And the number 4 reminds me, because obviously there's, the 4 questions, the 4 kids. They have the 4 biblical daughters, and the 4 that they suggested are Miriam, the daughter possessing wisdom of heart, what does she say? Tamar, the rebellious daughter, what does she say? Ruth, the simple and pure daughter, and the beautiful captive daughter who cannot even ask or cannot even speak. But the thing that's interesting is as I went through this, they have a page here on the Ethiopian Jews as well, as you mentioned, is that they have a statement in here from an author that I hadn't really thought of in a long time, John Dos Passos, who I'd read in high school, and I really like this great. And he talks about the dangers of labeling. And the one thing that they mention in this book that I thought was really interesting is we all have a little bit of every child in us. In other words, be careful in labeling,
Right.
someone is the wise, someone is the despondent or whatever it is. And, so it's just a question of, recognizing obviously the obvious that, a label can sometimes be very harmful and, very, not true.
And so Larry's talking about how in some traditions, they say the 4 women of the Bible instead of the 4 sons, and picking Miriam, Tamar, and Ruth as 3 of them. And then the one who doesn't know how to ask would be and also not labeling children by saying they're wise or simple or mean. So that's another one. So
one other thing, which is from the Center of Judaism in the United States, which is Monmouth County, New Jersey, and this is from the Chabad in Monmouth County. And the reason I mentioned this pamphlet is that apparently the first Reform rabbi that was ordained was from Monmouth County, and we're celebrating her 50th anniversary, I believe, this year of
Sally Presen, you mean the first female
she's
rabbi?
from Monmouth County, yeah, she's a rabbi emeritus now
Right.
in one of the synagogues there, not the Chabad synagogue.
Yeah.
Some families, to have fun, they take groups of 4 to identify, like the Marx brothers. Which one of the Marx brothers would be the wise, the one?
Oh, that's a great idea.
And then the 4 godfathers, Vito and Sonny and Michael, and then and pick any nice group of 4 and do that. It's a lot of
Who's
fun.
the 4th godfather? The guy who was with before Vito, the one he killed in The Godfather Part 2?
No, with Anthony in Godfather 3 becomes the next
Oh, that's
godfather.
right. And Godfather 3. Yeah, that's right. When he retires.
The
Thank you.
nephew, yeah.
I can't believe I forgot that. Thank you, Les. Flossie.
My grandmother used to, or Bubby as we called her, she used to make her own gefilte fish. And the fish were fresh. And then they were,
With
and then
her
putting
own
in the
horse radish.
Oh, my
grinder and yes, and
Uh-huh.
everything. So,
How long did it take?
It took a while,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
it took
a
very
day.
little time to eat,
You're right.
all the work and
Day.
everything. And when my grandfather, my Zeta, would do a Seder and he'd come to our house, my mother was years ago ahead of her times in that we invited neighbors. We had Christians, we had a neighbor that was a Quaker, remember her? And it was just an amazing Seder with all different backgrounds.
Oh,
and
nice.
doing.
That's
It was
awesome.
Very, very nice in that sense.
And I think we'll have more, but Flossie talks about her grandmother who made her own gefilte fish with the grinder and how they invited non-Jews to their Seder. So we'll go to Arlene and Jane.
Yeah, now that you're talking about the gefilte fish, I always knew it was Passover because my grandmother had fish in the bathtub. So they were swimming around in the bathtub. And so
Talk
I
about
always
fresh.
knew that fresh gefilte fish was gonna come next.
Yeah.
And Arlene and Jane are
What fish did she use? The gefilte?
Pike.
carp, pike, whitefish.
Pike, yep.
So both Jane and Arlene remember that as soon as they saw the bathtub with live fish in it, it was Passover was coming.
That's so
And it sounds like the story with the boy where he keeps feeding it, and the fish keeps getting bigger and bigger, so it's too big. Yeah. So whitefish, they don't, was, you said it was pike or carp or gefilte, they don't remember which fish it was. Yeah. Any other traditions?
That's funny.
Well, my mom remarried when I was 9 years old, and she married Irving, who was a wonderful stepfather to me. And he was Orthodox, and we were not Orthodox at all. And I remember my mother changing the dishes for Passover. It was like such a big deal. But she started making the gefilte fish, and I remember the roe.
Right.
Um,
Like the eggs?
The eggs.
Yeah, and I loved it.
She put a roe in there as well? I want some of that. That sounds really good.
She went right Gung ho.
Gung ho, yeah.
We had about 30 people for Passover.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
wonderful. It was really a wonderful experience.
Look about using roe in the
I never heard of that,
making
yeah.
of the
Yeah.
fish eggs and the making of filter fish. That would be awesome.
Saying in addition to the gefilte fish, my grandmother used to make it, but there was
Right.
no fish in the bathtubs. We lived in Brooklyn. She used to go to the fish store. But in addition, she made horseradish. And when she'd get the bees and she would make it, from scratch. And my dad, may he rest in peace, used to say it was so hot, it puts hair on your chest. I'll never forget that. And I never understood as a little kid, like, what? What does he mean by that?
Why would
Yeah.
you do that?
But
Yes.
nothing like fresh horseradish.
Fresh horseradish.
My grandmother-
Yes.
My grandmother lived with us, so
Yeah, yeah.
the whole house became, but I never think of changing dishes as traditional or
Yeah.
cleaning the house as
Yeah.
traditional.
Yeah,
It
right.
just was,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's what you did.
Yeah.
And we used to take apart the beds because my mom had 5 siblings. And so everybody came with their families and it was.
Oh, wow.
It was really nice. She made everything.
That's
She made her own
Sure.
noodles.
So talk about the cleaning of the house.
Sheila, I have a question for you. Did people eat the homemade horseradish? Were there a lot of people who felt, oh, it's just too strong?
No.
It
No,
loses
everybody-
its strength.
I mean, you were warned, you were forewarned how hot it was, but everybody ate it. Yeah,
Because I make my own and,
you do.
oh yeah, it's the easiest thing in the world.
Is
to get a
it?
Food process,
Oh, you
yeah.
just-
You just.
Oh, yeah.
no, you
Oh, yeah,
just-
grandma didn't have a food processor.
Talking about making homemade.
Yeah,
But I know, but a lot of people who've been to Seder at my house, they don't want to go near it because it's just.
because, yeah,
Yeah.
your eyes tear, right?
Oh,
While
and
you're doing it.
Oh, but it's so
my
good.
God,
But
so
then-
good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I know, I know.
So we're talking about yes or no to horseradish.
Right, right.
Yeah, we had a gentleman in our
Michael, I'm
community who
coming to
made
your
horseradish
house
for
with some
everybody.
horseradish.
Yeah, we had a very simple, we did have a gentleman in my community who made horseradish for everybody in the community, which was nice. And they had a pool next door to us. And what I would do is I would stand like this and divide the waters in the pool. And then people would walk
That's
through.
cute. That's
Yeah,
cute.
That was my tradition, so.
Did you have Texas barbecue?
Oh, yeah, we had Texas
Yeah.
barbecue is everything. Eat a
Barbecue, brisket.
lot of barbecue and Mexican food. That's what I grew up on. Until the 80s when we started eating a little more healthy. Yeah, then we,
I read that Abraham Lincoln died on the fourth night of Passover.
yeah, he died. Yep.
Yes, and the Jews were so upset that certain congregations went and did the mourner's cottage. And
Yeah.
it's one of the first times it was done for a
Right,
non-Jew.
especially in the north. Yeah, it was a very big deal when he
Well,
he
it wouldn't
died.
be down south.
Yeah. I think down south a few too as well. I mean, he was president, but yeah, he was murdered during Passover. All right.
You mentioned there's just one very sad occasion that, we're all aware of, I'm sure, is that Bob Weiner.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just heard just
Real
now.
prominent members of our
Yeah.
community here passed away.
Lincoln's Yahrzeit is Friday night at the Seder,
Oh, is it? Oh, it's on the first night this year.
15th, yeah.
And Larry's just mentioning, if for those who knew Bob Weiner, he just passed away yesterday, and he was a very important part of the community up here. And I think they have yet to set the dates for the memorial services. They're going to do one where he's from and one here as well, from what I'm told. All right, a couple other traditions I'll mention before we.
That's a fascinating.
Yes, I know. In Turkey, at the conclusion of Passover, you take a little parsley and you say in Arabic, with each word of the verse, we cross the parsley in our hands from one shoulder to the other of the person we are facing. After we finish the verse, we give each other a blessing of the year ahead, specific to what's going on in our respective lives. We continue until every person is given, every single person a blessing. And you say that. So you get a group of the people and you do all that around. And Iraq and Kurdistan, you begin the Seder with the dialogue, kind of like a play, dramatically. A child goes out, knocks on the door, and says what we heard before. Where have you come from? Where are you going? What are your supplies? So very similar. And so those are some of them. And of course, in some Sephardic Seders, and this is very common, they don't say all 4 blessings for the 4 cups. Now they have the 4 cups, but they only say the blessing over the first and third cup. Mhm. So believing that, by saying it over the first cup, it counts for the second. By saying over the third, it counts for the fourth. And so those are some Jewish traditions. Let's see if we have anything here. If anybody, I hope.
When did the Afikomen come into the Seder?
I don't know. That's a good question. Does anybody know when the Afikomen came in?
That's Greek, right? It's a
It
Greek
means,
word.
Is it
yeah,
Greek?
it's
It's
dessert in Greek, yeah.
Do the Sephardics have different food at their Seder?
They
They
do.
must have,
And
yeah,
there's different foods, a lot of different
Lot of
foods, because
different, yeah.
again,
sweet, a lot of sweet, right?
well, the biggest difference is the overall what they eat, because in the Ashkenazic world, basically, Jews became insulated for a long period of time, and we made all these rules because we're stuck in these shtetls and these ghettos. We went and just, instead of studying education and science, we just made more rules. And so we have a lot of rules for Passover. You can't eat this, you can't eat this, you can't eat this. Where the Sephardim, which lived in the world, didn't really have this many rules. They were not, they had friends who were not Jewish. They're not trying to separate themselves as much. So when it comes to not eating rice or legumes or all these other corn, the Sephardim do not have any of that. They don't eat bread or breaded products, but everything else they eat.
What do
So
restaurants do in Israel during the Passover?
most close because to clean and Passover, whatever, is very difficult. I don't know which one. There are a few that do open, but most of them, I think,
The
close.
hotels would.
The hotels would, yeah.
Would all
The
change
hotels
over to
would definitely,
Passover.
yeah. Hotels definitely.
But Haifa has an exception.
They all have exceptions. There is always going to be a restaurant or two who do it because obviously they get a lot of business, but most do not stay open. And even some grocery stores close, just depending where you are.
I remember they used to put over the shelves of the grocery stores, they used to put cloth.
Yeah.
Hanging on sheets
And that's what a lot do
And
still.
one of the famous things was that they would have labels from Pepsi-Cola. And the owner of the store would put, I'm not sure he would take bottles of Pepsi-Cola and just put the labels on them, whether they were, pre-Passover or not. It was just
Talking about what do grocery stores do for if they want to stay open, and either some places just put tablecloths over their chametz. And he was talking about how one grocery store, they would put kosher Passover on every Pepsi, every cola product. Just
Which is
Publix
not
and,
kosher.
excuse me, Jane,
For Prince.
Publix and Kroger, both places. I went to get some matzah and, I picked up a box and I ran into a friend and she said, "Did you look to make sure that it's kosher?"
right.
And I said, "Oh my gosh," because that had happened to us before once and it wasn't. And so if you still need to buy matzah at Kroger or Publix and you care, there's just one little shelf that's hidden that has.
Right.
basic-
And yeah, and Michael made a good point.
You should see.
Well, they do it out of
Michael, go to
ignorance.
Food Line.
Mm.
It is
Oh, really?
amazing,
Really?
Maybe a food
amazing.
line here?
The Food Line, and because of Rabbi Mendel,
Oh, okay.
what he has done, there's a whole aisle, like starting from here, like going down to there.
I may go by right after this.
All
How
kosher
far is it
stuff.
from here?
Oh, 2 seconds.
Oh, not five
Okay, I've never
minutes.
been there.
And then there's a whole counter of kosher meat.
That's right.
Yeah, he has brought in everything. I mean, I know for years I could never find potato starch or matzah. I mean, you couldn't find it, right? It was great. Everything is there.
Well, they're talking about how sometimes in grocery stores, they will just put all the Jewish food together and it's not necessarily kosher for Passover. So there's a lot of matzah that's not kosher for Passover. You'll also notice that some things from Israel are kosher for Passover, but they may not be kosher for Passover for you. Because like the peanut snacks, like Bamba, for instance, says kosher for Passover, but it's only kosher for Passover if you're Sephardic and you believe it's okay to eat peanuts.
Well, rules are changing though.
Yes.
I remember several years ago when the conservative movement decided that kitanyot, which is not legal for Passover,
Right.
did not include rice or corn from now on.
Right. Yeah, they just got
You
rid of
could eat
it.
it, Jane.
They just, the conservative
You
movement
could eat
just,
rice and corn?
Yes.
the
Yeah.
conservative movement just got over it completely.
So I mean, that opened up the whole new world, and I noticed that this year, the gold's label on the sweet and sour sauce did not have Passover.
And so it's, there's a lot of
It
rules.
says OUP, but it was
Yeah.
Parv.
Rabbi, why couldn't you eat corn? Or what was the reason?
Well, again, the rules in the Ashkenazic world where they're just creating all these kind of rules for
Yeah.
any. So a lot of it was because corn was housed next to wheat, which was housed next to
Oh,
this. So
God.
everything was
And
stored.
rice.
Made from wheat.
Right. So,
Because rice was housed next to
yeah,
wheat?
exactly.
And peanuts?
And the same thing, but also because some of these things can be made into bread-like things, like
Oh,
cornbread.
peanut.
Which we
Oh.
have rice bread.
Rice
Yes,
bread?
exactly. That's why, that's why rice is not
Rice
allowed.
bread, really? Or rice
Well, now
cakes?
it is.
Now it is, but that's
Except
true.
if you're,
Yeah, depending who you are.
except if you're religious.
Until I've always kept those. I do not eat any of those things. I may
You
change this
you don't
year.
eat corn and rice?
Yeah, I may
Uh-huh.
change this year just because I'm trying on a more stricter diet with
Yeah.
meat. So, but we'll see starting after today because I'm eating a lot of this
Yeah,
food
you eat all
over
that.
here. Well, that is, any questions from over here? There's a guy in Las
Fascinating.
Vegas who's advertising to make your CAR kosher for Passover. Your car, oh, your
Your
car, but
car.
he has it capitalized like it's an acronym. He'll clean the car, take out the seats and vacuum it. Nice. That's a good
Oh, I
idea.
like that.
Yeah. So if you're wealthy instead of, Les says, and if you're wealthy instead of roe for your putting in your gefilte fish, you would use caviar, which is some types of caviar is kosher, are kosher for Passover, actually.
Caviar.
Okay. All right. And then read about the gold, the Shabbat. It is a special read. Okay, there's a special read.
Funny.
I can bring chicken and or duck eggs for Seder. That'd be great. That's just going to be for me and you, Genevieve, by the way, not for anybody else. Because they're serving brisket at our Seder this year. Usually we do fish and I don't eat non-kosher brisket. So a pleasure, guys. Great to see you here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Jen, again for bringing your girls to the thing. Please bring all of them to the next one. Les, a great pleasure seeing you. Happy Passover, everybody. Stay safe, and we will be having a virtual session next week. So stay safe, everybody.